Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is a channel where I paint my face, turn my camera on, and talk about some books. It is finally week 4 of Magical Readathon and Realmathon, the final week. We are at the end of April. It feels like the end of an era. Started the month with some really amazing reads and real hype to jump straight in and read all the books. My last week was kind of not as good. Everything that I enjoyed was a reread and everything else I didn't enjoy. So hopefully we can come back swinging in this final week and pick some books that I'm really going to love. As for the update on where we're at so far, just on the screen here is the number of points that I have currently for Realmathon. And as for what I'm doing at the moment with Magical Readathon, I've finished all my course subjects. I am completely up to date on the quest, with the latest part of it having just opened today. So we are going to jump straight into that right now, read the quest sheet, and figure out what the next book I'm going to be reading is. Basically where I'm at in the quest is the alchemy professor had an issue. He brought me in to help solve it, found out that his parents or family or something hid a really dangerous substance in his lab. I've helped him find it and now we have to destroy it. So I've gotten to the point of the quest where I think I've chosen the book to destroy the substance. So I'm going to put the next quest sheet up on the screen here and we will read through it together. So it says, you sit down still dizzy watching him frantically gather 20 odd ingredients. He kneels down to check that you're okay and swiftly moves on to draw an intricate transmutation circle on the floor. Watching him work is fascinating. He moves with odd precision, every muscle attuned to efficiency. I guess when you work on something where one wrong move can have life or death consequences, you learn that each move is as important as the next. He pours something pink on one side, throws some ingredients right on top. It hisses. Not even the magic wants to be involved in this. You rub your forehead as a headache sets in. Was the moonlight always so bright? Finally, after a few long minutes of more incantations, arrangements, calculations, drawing, and spellwork, he removes the stopper from the Deathglow vial. It explodes in color. Something so grim, you think. How can it carry a rainbow of colors? Why does it look so inviting and hopeful? He empties it on top of the transmutation circle. You swear the whole room shakes. There's a horrible, mournful scream that seems to pierce your very soul, and you think nothing is ever worth this. In a flash, it is done. Auburn sits down, letting exhaustion finally kick in. He smiles a weak smile at you, you return it. Nothing quite as bonding as banishing forbidden magic and destroying false evidence. You know that for him, this is far from over, but after seeing him work, you pity the ones that go against him. Before you leave, he insists on giving you something in return. He has been working on a few pieces that are now ready, and because you helped him so much, he thinks you more than deserve it. He tells you of 3 choices. First, the Wand of Menace. It is a one-of-a-kind wand conduit designed and perfected by Auburn Bluewing himself. This was a passion project, a bit outside of his usual craft. The wand is inscribed with powerful alchemical amplifiers, and whilst excellent for everything, is perfect for those with a more creative spirit or pursuing callings with a creative focus. Like all conduits, it has an amelarite core, but the rest of the design is an Auburn Bluewing special. Secondly, we have a Potion of Respite, an extremely rare and expensive potion that lets the user skip sleep and not feel tired. It takes at least 5 years to brew and it is known for going terribly wrong. But of course, this would not be a problem for Auburn Bluewing. The potion has up to 10 uses. It is perfect for the most ambitious folk who thrive during the late hours and wish to eliminate the need for sleep without the consequences. Use it for studying, parties, travels, quests, or whatever else you can think of. Thirdly, a key to Professor Auburn's study. This, of course, allows you to enter the study when it is normally closed and allows you to study undisturbed. It also unlocks a few bookshelves that are usually locked away from other students, offering you exclusive access to tomes you'd never see otherwise. The study is filled with scrolls, blueprints, and workbooks, but it also offers various ingredients and alchemy desks for practice. The key is inscribed with unique glyphs that cannot be replicated, and thus only the keys that were crafted specifically for these locks can be used to gain access to the study. Rumor has it there are fewer than 5 in the whole world. So I have to choose between a wand that's amazing and can do anything, a potion that will stop me from ever needing to sleep and it has 10 uses, and unlimited access essentially to Auburn's study. And I'm very much tossing up between the wand and the key, mostly because the wand just looks cool and the key, obviously that's incredible. I think I'm gonna go for the key because I feel like there's so many more benefits with this key to Auburn's study. So let's select that. And there we go. I've got the key. It's up on the screen. There's no books left to read for this. I just get the key. So that's it. That's the end of the quest. That is the end of the Magical Readathon quest for me. There's no more prompts I have to complete for Magical Readathon, nothing like that. I can just read how I want for the rest of the month, which I won't lie is kind of weird. So I guess I can pick whatever I want to read for the next read. And I think what I'm going to pick, because I'm also doing another video at the moment where this book is relevant to that, is All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. I'm currently doing another round of Anticipation Hesitation at the moment, and I think it will have come out by the time this video goes up, so do go back and check out that video if you want to know my full thoughts and everything. But obviously I'm reading it in real time, so you'll see it in this video as well. As for what this book is about, it says, as princess of the island kingdom Visidia, Amora Montara has spent her entire life training to be High Animancer, the master of souls. The rest of the realm can choose their magic, but to secure her place as heir to the throne, Amora must master the monarchy's dangerous soul magic. But when her demonstration goes horribly wrong, Amora is forced to flee. She strikes a deal with Bastian, a mysterious pirate. He'll help her prove she's fit to rule if she'll help him reclaim his stolen magic. But sailing the kingdom holds more wonder and more peril than Amora anticipated. A destructive new magic is on the rise, and if Amora is to conquer it, she'll need to face legendary monsters, cross paths with vengeful mermaids, and deal with a stowaway she never expected. Or risk the fate of Visidia and lose the crown forever. So, pirate fantasy romance, super keen. I'm gonna jump straight in and I'll let you know my thoughts in a little bit. Hey, I won't lie, I'm so tired. I'm falling asleep, but I'm here to update the vlog. You're welcome. My laugh sounds like a wheeze, I've just realized. Like, my laugh sounds like I'm a smoker and I'm just like coughing, I guess. But anyway, do you ever have those days where you're reading and you're so set on getting so much reading done and you're so excited, you start the day super energized and everything, you break for lunch, and immediately after having lunch, all you want to do is sleep, to the point where listening to your audiobook, reading your book, your eyes just start to shut of their own accord. That is where I'm at the moment. I was reading All the Stars and Teeth and very much enjoying this book, but my eyes are just like, nope, and you're just yeeting out of here by like just constantly shutting. But anyway, this book, what am I thinking about this book so far? So I am thinking that part of it feels very predictable. There is an element of it where, you know, you've got this one kingdom that's clearly in charge and this history that relates very specifically to that one kingdom, in that there's this beast that seemed to live in their history, and then someone in the king's family bloodline defeated the beast, but as a result had to take on that beast's power. And the rule after that defeat was that the beast would continue to be like controlled by that bloodline so long as people only practiced one form of magic rather than practicing multiple types of magic, because there's multiple types of magic like prevalent in this world. And so that bloodline decided to do this fun little segregation thing, which great, where basically when you decided what type of magic you wanted to practice, you would then be sent to the island where that magic is practiced, and you could be hired back to other islands and everything to practice your magic for the benefit of another island, but at the end of the day, your home would change to whichever magic you decided to start practicing. So that immediately tells me that some shady is happening in this particular bloodline's past, and the reason why there is sort of disgruntled people out there at the moment is because people are like, why should I only be practicing one magic? Like, why do I have to rely on all these other people to help me? Like, when my island floods, why do I have to rely on the people who control water to come and help me? Like, why don't I just learn how to control water? So there's a lot of tension there, and I'm definitely thinking that there's going to to be a reveal at some point that actually there was no beast that was defeated. The beast was always just that bloodline, and they've just changed history. So that's what I'm thinking is probably going to happen. So that would mean that then we have two big bads in this story, because there's one big bad that's from this one island called Zodo or Zodost, or what's it called? It's called Zudo, and there's a guy from that island who seems to be going to all the other islands and convincing other people that they need to practice multiple types of magic, and he's kind of taking over, and then as a result the king is like punishing those islands. So I think it's going to be an interesting complex there of the guy from Zuda who's like, no, the history is wrong, you should listen to me, and he's a bad guy, but then you're also going to have another bad guy, which is the king, who's like, no, the history is right, you need me in order to survive. And the reason why I think our king is one of the bad guys is because he's basically like said to his daughter, if you don't perform this trial in the way that you're supposed to, if you succumb to the beast, I'm going to like lop your head off. And she succumbed to the beast, and so now she's potentially just gonna be like gone, like head just gone. Anyway, so that's kind of what's happening in this book at the moment. Sorry if this is very, very confusing, very, very badly explained, but I'm worried that this particular story is going to be a little bit predictable if I'm already sort of figuring all of that out from the hints that have been dropped in the story so far. It's definitely, if it follows that sort of typical fantasy plotline, then I think that's what's going to happen. We've got a nice little love triangle here as well. You can already tell who's going to win out of that, because it's one like soppy guy who doesn't really know how to function, but he's like the king's choice, like the right choice in terms of royalty and logic and everything, but then you got like the adventurous choice with the pirate, and he's a bit swashbuckling and, you know, a bit fun and fancy and fiery and all that sort of stuff, and that he's definitely going to be the one she ends up with. But yeah, so I'm worried that this is going to be incredibly predictable if it follows that stereotypical sort of fantasy plotline. But I mean, I'm enjoying it so far. It's good fun. It jumped right into the plot after a bit of backstory, a bit of history. You can definitely tell that the main character has been underappreciated and underestimated all of her life, and she's really determined to change that. You can definitely tell as well that she's always been striving to be involved and to be part of the kingdom and part of the ruling family, and for her father to tell her things and to go out and control the boats and go out on the seas and explore and everything like that, and no one's ever let her do it. So now she's getting the opportunity to, and she's thriving, which is great to see. We love those independent girlies going, I don't need you guys to sort me out, I can do this on my own. But yeah, it's definitely like a very beautiful world and a very beautiful, everything's described and the writing so beautifully and colorfully, but there's this constant undercurrent of like creepiness and eeriness and mystery and like bad stuff, because, you know, on the wealthy island, they're excessive, like they're paying ridiculous amounts for simple bits of food, when, you know, when the people on this island also know that there are other islands that need that money because their island is barely staying afloat. So it's this very interesting situation where it's examining all these like picturesque, beautiful places that are like made for wealthy people, as they say in the book. And the main character is looking at all of this, and she's never had an issue with it before, but now that she's seen it through this different lens, now that she knows more about the history and more about the state of play and all these different islands, she's going, these things I used to find so beautiful and I now find excessive. So that's been interesting to read about, because like I said, it has that undercurrent of like something's not quite right here, and I like it when books do that because it makes it a bit fun and a bit creepy. But yeah, that's kind of the book at the moment. I'm hoping it doesn't get too predictable, but I think it probably will, so that might affect my rating. And yeah, but I'm only like 130 something pages in, so I'm gonna keep reading if I can keep myself awake, and I will give you my thoughts in a little bit. But as for tonight, I'm going to get some Chinese takeaway, because there's this Chinese place down the road from us that does this just the most amazing food. They have Chinese food, but then they also have like Thai food there. Like they do a whole mix of different stuff, and it's so good, and every time I go there the food is absolutely amazing. So I'm gonna get something from there for dinner tonight, and then Ben and I have this Sherlock Holmes game that we're gonna play, where it gives you this little case card and you have to solve the mystery, find all the different clues and things. But yeah, other than that, it's gonna be me trying to stay awake while I read more of this book, because I've only got 4 hours left of the audiobook. It's like 6 p.m. and I'm determined to get this finished either tonight or like early into tomorrow, because tomorrow I've got plans to actually go out to Greenwich and like hang out in the Waterstones cafe and just enjoy my day a little bit. And then I'm seeing a friend tomorrow evening for drinks after she finishes work, because I've got the day off tomorrow, but she doesn't. And we wanted to catch up today, but I had plans today in the morning, so we're doing it tomorrow instead. But anyway, you guys don't need all that information. I'm going to get back to reading this book, and I will let you know more about my thoughts, provided I don't fall asleep, in a little bit. Hey, it is Monday afternoon now, and it's my first day off for this week. I've got Tuesday off as well, so I've definitely been enjoying myself, just chilling. I had a sleep in this morning, which was very, very much needed, but also kind of felt bad about it because I was supposed to go to the gym this morning, but I forgot. Anyway, we're ignoring all that. Other than that, I had a very slow start to my morning, which was really nice. I got some reading done. I finished all the Stars and Teeth, which I'll talk about in a sec, and I've just come back from going into Greenwich. I went to the Waterstones there and did what I usually do when I have a bit of free time. Just sat in the cafe, drank my chai latte, ate something yummy. I also went down to Macca's, got some lunch, which was very much enjoyed, although it made me feel really ill. So probably won't be doing that again anytime soon, because something about that meal just did not sit right with me. And then I just got home, so I thought it would be the perfect time to update you on the book that I finished, which was All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. So here's the book. I gave it 3.5 stars. Let's jump straight into my review, my core pile review, as I always do. Shout out to G for setting up this system. It is how I survive with my book reviews these days. So let's go into characters. I think my enjoyment of a lot of the elements of this book, and characters being one of them, was very much hindered by the predictability, I guess, of the story. They were cute and fun to follow, but I just didn't feel a lot of that suspense and a lot of that tension that I think I was supposed to feel, because they followed very, very similar paths, very, very similar trains to what I would expect from a sort of typical fantasy romance novel, YA, that kind of thing. The only thing that was really different, I guess, was the setting. So from the get-go, I predicted a lot of elements about these characters that I think were supposed to be twists later on in the book, which meant that when those twists happened, I didn't feel the suspense. But as for the actual characters themselves, I did enjoy following them. I did enjoy reading from their perspectives, or the one perspective, because it was a single POV book, I think. I enjoyed reading from Amora's perspective, the main character, as she fought against the marriage that she was forced into, fell in love with a guy that she chose, and ultimately learnt about a history of her world and her family that was completely rewritten in favor of her family, and the betrayal that she felt as a result of that was really, really interesting to explore from her perspective, as she had to rewrite her understanding of this world that she thought she knew better than anyone else. Bastian, who was the sort of main male lead, was swashbuckling and suave, although I have to say that I hated the audio narrator's narration of his character. Whenever he was speaking, her voice just did this weird raspy thing, and it was really off-putting, but he was equal parts mysterious and adorable, which is just a perfect male lead in every sense of the word. He was just a cinnamon bun, but also very much like, I would do anything to protect you kind of guy. Ferric, who's the sort of third element to a love triangle that's definitely like introduced at the beginning, but then you know very quickly that, you know, she's not going to end up with Ferric. He, again, audio narrator, horrible interpretation of his voice. It was really off-putting and really, really cringy, but the character himself was fun and cute, and just, you just want to give him a hug because he was so loyal and so devoted to his position and the people that he was sort of forced into relationships with. You know, you could tell that once he was set to be with someone that he would do anything for them, and that was very much the case in this story. So it was interesting sort of seeing him explore the fact that the people that he was loyal to didn't necessarily feel the same thing for him, and him having those break moments where he goes, okay, I need to protect myself now because this person clearly doesn't care about me in the same way that I do. They're not willing to try in the same way that I do, so I'm gonna find something that, or find someone that is willing to do that for me. And it was really, really nice watching that play out. I would like a little bit more time with some of the other characters, like the mermaid, Vitea, because she was super sassy and spicy and fun, and I really, really want to see more from her. And I also really want more time with the big bad, understanding his motivations and what led to the decisions that he made to essentially massacre like whole islands worth of people in order to meet his goals that are all based on this history that he finds out about, or this sort of false interpretation of the history, that just didn't seem like enough of a motivating factor for me for him to go and do what he did. So I want to spend more time with that character and understand his relationship with some of the other characters that are mentioned and some of the relationships that are revealed as well. I just want to understand those dynamics a little bit more because I think that'll justify his actions a little bit more. As for atmosphere, because I was able to predict the plot, the atmosphere just wasn't as tense and suspenseful as I think it was supposed to be, but I will give this story credit for the really, really visual language and the way that it was able to really place me on that ship and, you know, in a journey sort of style story and keeping me intrigued, because journey style stories aren't something I usually enjoy, but I think the atmosphere was sort of heightened enough that I was able to enjoy this one, and the beauty of the landscapes that they were describing were really, really well described, which transitions very smoothly into the writing. As I said, the way that writing was used to evoke imagery and the settings was incredible, but when it came to a lot of the characters' sort of interactions with each other and the fleshing out of some of the romances and relationships, it did get a little bit awkward at times. It did feel a little bit cliche, but maybe that's just because it's a YA story and I'm used to reading adult romances, which are a little bit less cliche, a little bit more nuanced, I guess, in those relationships. So maybe it's less to do with the book and more to do with the age rating. As for the plot, again, entirely predictable, which kind of ruined it a little bit for me, but still enjoyed how it all turned out, enjoyed the way that it flowed with that sort of somewhat predictable storyline, enjoyed the way it sprinkled in a few things that I didn't expect, and I liked how the relationship and the romance was developed and the found family aspect was developed between the characters as well, which was a nice sort of subplot to layer through the story and that I really enjoyed. As for intrigue, not to repeat myself, but it was definitely hit by the predictability of this story, but enough was sort of done with the setting and the writing and the characters and how lovable everybody was to really keep me hooked, and I read this pretty much in 1 and a bit sittings. As for logic, I think the logic was fine, but again, I do want to get a bit more understanding about the big bad before I truly believe and, you know, buy into this idea that he's able to massacre entire islands worth of people and destroy people's lives, all based on a history that he found out isn't actually the real history. I just wanted to get a bit more understanding of that, and if I did, then the logic would make more sense. So I'm hoping that that's sort of explored in the next book. And then as for enjoyment, this was a fun time, and I really did enjoy myself. Even though I predicted everything that was going to happen, I still had fun with this read, and it was just a nice comfort read, nice and easy, nothing too strenuous or tense, but still enjoyable, so I wasn't bored or anything. So I gave this book 3.5 stars, and am ready to jump straight into the next book, which I'm going to be picking up, which is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. As for what this story is about, the blurb says, in the markets of 18th century Cairo, thieves, tricksters, con artists, and outcasts eke out a living, swindling rich nobles and foreign invaders alike. But alongside this new world, the old stories linger. Tales of jinn and spirits, of cities hidden among the swirling sands of the desert, full of enchantment, desire, and riches, where magic pours down every street, hanging in the air like dust. Many wish their lives could be filled with wonder, but not Nari. She knows the trades she uses to get by are just tricks and sleights of hand. There's nothing magical about her. She only wishes to one day leave Cairo, but as the saying goes, be careful what you wish for. I have actually started this book. I am about 70 pages into it so far, and I'm realizing that this is the sort of story that I definitely need to read with an audiobook, particularly because of the pronunciation of the language used. It's words that I'm not familiar with. I'm not familiar on the spelling. I'm not familiar with the pronunciation of those words. So in order to fully understand and enjoy and feel like my reading experience of this isn't stunted because I'm constantly stumbling over things, I'm going to be listening to the audiobook as well. And I did pick up the audiobook and it has made the experience a little bit smoother for me. So I'm going to continue on that strain, but I'm still enjoying the story so far. I think it's very, very much a big world. There's lots and lots of elements at play, lots of elements to understand. There's a magic system that I need to come to terms with. There seems to be some kind of monarchy or royal family or military guard or something that has a lot of power that is somewhat supportive in some elements of the rebel plot. There are some people who are sort of funding that, but then obviously the larger organization is trying to shut it down. So there, I guess that suggests there is like an underlying rebel plot going through this story, which will be interesting. And then there are two sort of main characters to follow, Nari and Ali, and you get the perspectives of each of them. So I assume they're going to join up at some point in the story and hopefully work together because I kind of like both of them. And they both seem to be going down the same train of like supporting people rather than, you know, trying to squash the rebel plotline. So Anyway, enjoying the book so far. One other thing that I will say though is that while I was at Waterstones Greenwich, I did pick up a book. And as for what that book is, it's All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace. I'm really excited to jump into this one as soon as I finish City of Brass. But I'm not going to tell you what it's about, obviously, because it is the sequel of All the Stars and Teeth. This is a duology, so I'm super glad that I'm going to be smashing out another series right from the get-go, because I am trying to cut my series down because I am a ridiculous number of series unfinished right now. But yeah, I absolutely could not resist picking up the next book because I was still, despite it being predictable, I still really enjoyed the first book, and I think it ended in such a way where I have no idea where the second book is going to go, so I'm excited to be a little bit more surprised in this read. So that is kind of the update for now. Before I forget, as for Realmathon, the points that this story got me was 10 points for an indie publisher because it was published by Titan Books, 10 points for hybrid genre because it's very much fantasy romance, 10 points for genre of my realm because romance is one of the main genres, 10 points for being between 201 to 400 pages. It was just at like 397. 6 points for source of light on the cover because there's like lots of little stars and everything all over it, totally counts. 6 points for being able to spell my name on the book, the quote, the New York Times bestselling author, all that sort of stuff. I can spell my name with that. 3 points for this being underrated because I haven't heard anyone talk about it, and it came out in 2020, so it's fairly recent, and it came out at a time that I was actually on BookTube, and I didn't really hear anyone talk about it, so I'll give it a couple points for that. 3 points for being YA or middle grade, it's YA, and 1 point for it being a book with a map. There's your proof, there is the map. So that is the total number of points that it got me for Realmathon. I'm gonna keep going with this story, and I will let you know my thoughts in a little bit. Morning. It is Tuesday morning. It's Anzac Day. Happy Anzac Day. If you don't know what Anzac Day is, it stands for Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. It's essentially like Australia's Remembrance Day, except we do Remembrance Day too. So it's our own little special day where we celebrate and remember everyone in the armed forces who has played a role in protecting our country. My auntie used to be in the Navy, and I think my uncle did as well. So it's a really special day for my family, and I've never missed a ceremony. So I'm updating you before I head out to the Anzac Day ceremony in London City, right near the Cenotaph. I think there's like a big parade and just like a nice little moment of remembrance, a minute's silence, all that kind of thing happening today. So I'm super excited to be going along to that. It's my first time doing the parade rather than doing the dawn ceremony, because don't get me wrong, Anzac Day is super important to me, and I really like enjoy being a part of it and remembering, and the minute silence and the dawn service and everything. But that dawn service, you have to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning in order to get there in time, because it happens as the sun rises, and man, I could not do that this year. So I'm going to the parade instead, and I'm honestly over the moon about it, because it's one of those things where you have to put your name into a ballot and then they pick, and they picked me. So yeah, it's gonna be really amazing. But as for the bookish update, I'm here to unfortunately say that I have DNF'd City of Brass about 160 pages into the book. And it's not because it was a bad book in any sense of the word, it's just because I spent so much time in this story really confused. It's the type of story where if you even lose your attention for a moment while you're reading it, you will miss so much. You will miss new characters, you will miss the explanation of how those characters relate to the old characters, you'll miss some world building, you'll miss some political maneuvering, you'll miss relationship building, all that sort of stuff if you remove your attention for even a second, which meant that when I did eventually sort of lose attention for brief moments throughout the read, because I was listening to it on audiobook as well as reading it physically, I would miss really important bits of information and I would constantly go back and reread, and at the end of the day it just was a really stunted reading experience for me because I was so confused. There's also a lot of different cases in this story where one word is used to describe multiple groups of people, multiple types of people, multiple like species, I guess, of people, but then the reverse is true as well. There are multiple words used to describe one group of people, and it ended up just being a lot of names, a lot of species names, a lot of types of different factions and plot lines and all these sort of things that just all got messed up in my head, and I didn't know where I was at any point in time when I got to the point that I DNF'd this book. I was essentially in the middle of a chapter where a bunch of words that I know had been introduced earlier in the story were being used. Those names are the groups and the character names, and I didn't know who any of them were. I didn't know what any of the species were. I didn't know what the Devil was because it seemed to be changing all the time, so I gave up on the book because I was confused. That is just a reading experience for me. I am confused. So I won't be getting points or anything for that book for Realmathon because I didn't read enough of it, I think, to really allow myself to get any points for that one. But what I am picking up next is going to be Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is actually upon watching a video that Meg with Books, I think, did recently, where she had the author Courtney Summers actually come on to her channel and she did an interview with her. She talked about her favorite books and all that sort of thing. So it naturally made me want to read this because this is supposed to be mixed media and a bit of a murder mystery as well. But as for what it's about, it says, today WNRK is launching the first episode of a new serialized podcast, The Girls, created and hosted by Wes McCrae. When popular radio personality Wes McCrae receives a desperate phone call from a stranger imploring him to find 19-year-old runaway Sadie Hunter, he's not convinced there's a story there. Girls go missing all the time. But as soon as West's boss discovers Sadie fled home after the brutal murder of her little sister Maddie, he sees the makings of something big and orders West to the small town of Cold Creek, Colorado to uncover what happened. Sadie has no idea that her story will soon become the subject of a blockbuster podcast. She just wants revenge. Armed with a switchblade, Sadie follows a meager set of clues hoping they'll lead to the man who took Maddie's life because she's determined to make him pay for it with his own. But as West traces her journey to the darkest, most dangerous corners of big cities and small towns, a deeply unsettling mystery begins to unfold, one that's bigger than them both. Can he find Sadie before it's too late? Alternating between Sadie's unflinching voice as she hunts the killer and the podcast transcript tracking the clues she's left behind, Sadie is a breathless thriller about the lengths we go to protect the ones we love and the high price we pay when we can't. It will haunt you long after you reach the final page, and it is already thrilling me. I'm only 42 pages in, but I've witnessed a couple of sections of the podcast and I've seen or read a couple of perspectives from Sadie. Sorry, I can't speak this morning because I'm still so tired and I haven't had my coffee yet. But it's so interesting. It's such a complicated story already. So I am enjoying this massively. But as for everything else, I need to head off now to go and be a part of that ceremony, that parade. Let's go celebrate Anzac Day. Okay, Tuesday afternoon and I have finished Sadie by Courtney Summers. The reason I'm not holding it up is because I've now returned it to the library because I got an overdue notification. It was a day overdue. So obviously I had to rush that back to the library so that whoever has it held next can get it straight away. But I finished the book and I was absolutely enthralled by this story. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was absolutely incredible. It broke my heart, and man, I think more people need to read this if it is a content type or a content topic that they are able to dive more into. I would definitely advise anyone who wants to read this book to look into the trigger warnings because there is a lot that goes on in this story that you should be aware of before you jump in. But if it's something you're interested in, please do go and give it a read because it is a beautiful mixed media murder investigation, uncovering the secrets of a family's history, learning more about the girl who's uncovering those secrets. Honestly, I could not say enough amazing things about this story. But anyway, let's talk about my actual review. Let's jump straight into characters. So this story was told from two perspectives primarily. So you've got Sadie, who is the main character that everything kind of revolves around. She's gone missing at the very beginning of the story and everything is about trying to find her, and then you're reading from Sadie's point of view from the moment essentially that she went missing. And then you've got the second point of view, which is a guy named West, I think his name is, and he's essentially running a podcast, a radio show where he's going and interviewing all the people in Sadie's life to try and figure out what happened to her and how what happened to her is connected to a cold case, I believe, of the murder of her sister that happened, I think, a little while before she went missing. So the fact that it's told in these two different points of view is very, very interesting because when you're in Sadie's point of view, you get this really personal, very intimate, very just connected view of everything that happened to Sadie. and very much what it's like to experience that and be in her head and deal with the post-traumatic stress from everything that she's gone through, deal with those feelings of anger and revenge for what happened to her sister. She really wants to get retribution and revenge for what happened to her sister. So you get those really, really intense feelings in her point of view, as well as the intense sort of insecurity and anger at the world that she feels because she has a stutter, and everybody that comes across her when she speaks, you know, they immediately judge her, or they immediately think she sounds drunk or something like that. So you see that anger at the world and that sort of resentment towards other people, but then also resentment towards herself because she's frustrated that she can't get the words out that she's trying to say. So all of that is incredibly fascinating reading from Sadie's point of view, but then you go into West's point of view and it builds out Sadie's world in this even more complete way, because you get to see how other people view her and how other people interacted with her in her life and how she interacted with her sister from this sort of outsider perspective. As the title suggests, everything is kind of about Sadie, so you don't get as much character development and growth or anything from the point of views of the people that West is interviewing. You get a little bit of depth from West in that you find out he's a gay man with a young daughter, so he feels very, very connected to this case because the age that Sadie's sister was when she died is, I think, very, very similar to his own daughter's age. So you get this nice sort of full circle connection there in that he really feels strongly about helping these girls and trying to find Sadie. But I don't think there's really any character depth into him per se. It's more about building Sadie's world, and it was honestly fascinating to see her grow and change and me learn so much about her from all these different perspectives with all these different characters interacting together to tell her story. Even though Sadie's decision to get revenge for her sister's death and get retribution and dole out her own sort of murder, I guess, in order to sort of get justice for what happened to her sister isn't exactly what you'd consider logical or sympathetic, you really do feel sympathy for her as a character, because going into her head, you understand the trauma that led her to this point, the way that her childhood was sort of a broken childhood, the way that she was lacking human connection in those early years, and then how dedicated she became to her sister and how she saw her sister as this manifestation, I guess, of human connection when she was born. But you know, there's a lot of connections between these characters that are just really, really interesting to uncover and to unravel throughout the story, and the way it's told through these different point of views is just beautiful. As for atmosphere, the atmosphere of the story was always very, very tense and suspenseful, partly because it is split between that sort of inside Sadie's head and viewing everything as it happens from her perspective, and then the catch up that you're playing with the podcast as he's trying to track Sadie down as she moves from town to town to town. So you're feeling like this insane feeling of suspense because all you want is for them to find each other and for them to help each other, and you're just kind of waiting for that to happen. And it was just like I was on the edge of my seat going, when are they going to meet up? When are they going to meet up? And then the way the story ended, I think, was kind of perfect. As much as I hated it because it wasn't the full circle ending that I wanted, it was kind of perfect in that, you know, everybody got their own healing from the situation in their own way, and you're able to sort of fill in the ending the way you kind of want it to be and the way that would make it perfect for you. And I kind of liked that, but the sort of ambiguity of it was like stressing me out. As for the writing, I honestly think the writing was amazing. I am always impressed by any author who can write in mixed media all in one story, who can write from so many different points of view and make all the voices sound very, very distinct. Obviously Sadie's voice was the most distinct of all because you spend so much time in her head, but even all the different people in the podcast, maybe it was because I was listening to the audiobook at the same time, but the way all of them spoke in such different ways and the intricacies of their language that were specific to those characters, it was really, really clear who was speaking when. Even if you weren't listening to an audiobook, you could kind of tell whose voice you were listening from. And I'm always just really impressed when an author is able to do that. As for plot, I mean, the way the reveals were drip fed throughout the story, the way you found out more and more about Sadie's life and upbringing slowly as the story went on, the way you found more and more about the big bad, his accomplices, how large this sort of scheme, I guess, was just fascinating. The way that was slowly like revealed throughout the story kept everything really suspenseful and tense. I wouldn't say the ending was the most satisfying because obviously it's a bit of like fill in the blank kind of situation, but it made sense in the concept of the story, so I can understand that and I won't fault the book for it. As for intrigue, obviously this was sky high for me. If you couldn't already tell, I was hooked on this read. Found it very difficult to put it down when I started it last night, but then smashed through it today because I was just fascinated. As for logic, obviously Sadie's decision to take revenge and murder the person that she believed to have murdered her sister isn't the most logical decision a person could make. I still say that you can understand her logic behind the decision, considering her childhood, considering the trauma, considering her devotion to her sister because of her lack of sort of connection that she received as a child, considering how protective she was of her sister and how much reliance she had on her sister, I guess, for this connection. Was, you know, you could understand how she got to the point where she, you know, when that was stolen from her, she felt like she had to take revenge against that. So as for enjoyment, this isn't a book that you enjoy per se, but it is a book that I found absolutely fascinating. So I gave it 10 out of 10 for enjoyment because I just couldn't stop reading it. I couldn't put it down. It was so good. But yeah, that is Sadie. As for Magical Readathon, there's nothing really left for me to do there. So this has nothing to do with Magical Readathon, but as for Realmathon, I got 10 points for this book being from an indie publisher. I got 5 points for it being a new to me author. I got 4 points for mental health rep, 3 points for it being an underrated book because I haven't heard anyone talk about it except for Megan over at Meg with Books. I got 3 points for it being YA or middle grade because despite the content warnings, it is apparently a YA. And then I got 2 points for multi-POV. So that is Sadie by Courtney Summers, an absolutely fascinating read that I think everyone should read if they're willing to take this sort of content topic on. But now I gotta figure out what I'm going to be reading next, and I have no idea what that's gonna be. I was having a look through some of the books that I've got on like the audiobooks from my library because I'm trying to smash through my physical TBR and then, you know, just match up audiobooks from my library where I can. And I saw The Christie Affair was on that. I was debating saving this for one of my Agatha Christie Mysteries and Me videos. Complete shameless plug there, by the way. But I think this isn't really the type of mystery that Agatha Christie mysteries are, so I might just read this one separately. So I think this is going to be what I read next. But as for what this is about, it says, in 1926, Agatha Christie disappeared for 11 days. Only I know the truth of her disappearance. I know Hercule Poirot, I'm her husband's mistress. Agatha Christie's world is one of glamorous society parties, country house weekends, and growing literary fame. Nan O'Dee's world is something very different. Her attempts to escape a tough London upbringing during the Great War led to a life in Ireland marred by a hidden tragedy. After fighting her way back to England, she set her sights on Agatha, because Agatha Christie has something Nan wants, and it's not just her husband. Full of twists and turns Christie herself would be proud of, this compelling novel is not only a stunning reimagining of a real-life mystery, but also a profoundly moving tale of two complex women, lost loves, and hidden grief. So, super interested in this one. I think I'm gonna pick this up next, and I will let you know my thoughts in a little bit. Hey team, let's chat. So, 2 things to update you on, 2, not 4, 2, and that is 1, I have finished the book that I was reading. I think I told you about it last time, I hope I did. I finished that book, The Christie Affair by Nina de Gramont, and I got some book mail yesterday. So let's do the book mail first because that's more exciting. So first we've got this Waterstones parcel. So let's open her up, see what's inside. I already know because like I bought it, and it is these Infinite Threads. I was about to say This Woven Kingdom. No, it's These Infinite Threads, which is the sequel to This Woven Kingdom, which I read, I think, either in this week's vlog or last week's vlog. They're all falling together, but anyway, read it very, very recently, or the first book very recently. Super, super excited to jump straight into the second because I did have a good time with the first. I'm not going to tell you what this one's about because obviously it's spoilers, and you will have seen if you've been watching my vlogs what the previous one's about. So that's the first book mail. Second bit of book mail, I immediately unwrapped and immediately started reading because it was perfect timing. I just finished a book, so it was time to start a new one, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is Emily Henry's latest release, and man, am I excited for it. This one is about 2 people who are Wynne and Harriet, I think. They are ex-fiancés, and they are brought to a friend's like summer cabin for their very, very last holiday together before the cabin gets sold. Except Harriet isn't aware that Wynne's been invited, so when they show up, they make a deal to pretend that they are still together in order to not ruin this last holiday together with their friends. Naturally, it's a lot of fake dating, and there is bound to be all sorts of drama because there is like a surprise wedding thrown in there and everything. I am only like, what, 40 pages into this book, and I'm having so much fun already. It's so witty and fun. I miss Emily Henry's writing. That is an update for another day. Let's talk about the book that I've just finished, which is The Christie Affair by Emily Henry. This book got 1 star. I am so mad at this book because it felt very, very disrespectful towards what is essentially, in terms of the knowledge that I have of Agatha Christie's disappearance and the causes of that, it's very disrespectful towards what is essentially a story of mental health, loss, trauma, and it turns it into some sort of sappy romance thing with a murder mystery thrown in there that makes no sense. For me to give a book 1 star, I usually have to be personally offended by the content of that book, and the downside to me being personally offended by the content of this story is that if I ad lib and summarize my review for you, then I'm going to rant and I'm probably going to accidentally offend someone. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to read you word for word what sort of controlled me wrote in my core pile review. If that's not something you're interested in hearing, all you need to know is that I didn't like this book. So let's go through the core pile review. For characters, I wrote, I'm honestly really irritated by the character development in this story. The characterization of Agatha Christie felt disrespectful as it related her disappearance to finding a new man rather than the obvious mental trauma she must have suffered after the death of her mother and the breakdown of her marriage due to infidelity. It completely demeans and belittles the weight of Christie's disappearance, making her out to be a woman that stayed away as part of a ploy to get her husband and his mistress together and get children with her. I did enjoy how well rendered Nan O'Day was as a character, given the history and backstory provided throughout the book. When I wasn't peeved at Agatha Christie's representation and the underdeveloped plot points, more on that later, I did feel connected to Nan O'Day as a character. As for the secondary characters, namely the men, the relationships built with them didn't feel well developed, seemingly coming out of nowhere. Also, the actions these men were willing to take on behalf of the women they loved, for Finbar considering kidnapping a child, and for Chilton willing to forgive murder, were completely illogical and not at all explained away by the romance or character backstory for these men. For atmosphere, I wrote the atmosphere was completely ruined by the confusing writing style, the disrespectful representation of Agatha Christie, the missed opportunity for a more moving plot, the underdeveloped murder mystery, the ridiculous romances, and the fact that I was pissed off or confused for 99% of this read. For writing, I wrote confusing. That is how I would define the writing. At the beginning of the story, it is clear that it is going to be told from a single POV, namely Nan O'Day's. I was fine with that when I thought the story was going to be a slice of life or character study of Nan O'Day, with a sprinkling of the infamous Agatha Christie disappearance. Instead, what I got was a throwaway comment from Nan O'Day saying something along the lines of, even if I wasn't there, I can imagine specific conversations exactly how they played out, which was seemingly supposed to excuse Nan O'Day recalling exact conversations that she wasn't a part of. On top of that, it would feel like we had a POV change because I was reading about a conversation that Nan wasn't a part of, as well as the thoughts in the head of the people in that conversation, but it wasn't clear, and then it would swap back to Nan O'Day commenting on that conversation and the thoughts someone else had during it. It was all just really unclear and confusing. For plot, I wrote the Christie affair had the opportunity to tell a moving story about female empowerment, motherhood, female rage, trauma, and the women that were truly ahead of their time, but instead it was cheapened by an out-of-nowhere romance and an underdeveloped murder mystery. Even if not a story of any of that, it could have honed in on mental health. There was a clear story to tell about Agatha's mental state following the trauma and notoriety she experienced in her life, as well as the trauma of abandonment and a lost child that Nan O'Day faced. Delving into the implications of those heartbreaks and how the women found their way out of them would have been so rewarding, rather than these romances which were positioned as the fix-all for the trauma they experienced. As for the murder mystery, it felt like a bit of a throwaway plot, and whilst I was surprised by the they all did it reveal, it just didn't have the intended shock factor. It just felt too obvious, given how famous Murder on the Orient Express is for that exact reveal. I know Nina de Gramont was probably trying to plant seeds by having the names of the chapters set in the past be titled Here Lies Mary, as well as planting motive in these chapters, but the whole thing felt underdeveloped. Intrigue. I was intrigued by the story at the beginning, but it quickly died as I got confused by the writing and the plot began to feel nonsensical. The murder solve did reel me back in, but the reveal wasn't satisfying. For logic, I said, I'm sorry, a double murder happens and the not quite police officer just decides to drop the whole thing when he knows exactly what happened and who the killer was, because the woman he fell in love with, within the space of a couple days no less, all of a sudden wants him to protect the woman that her husband was cheating on her with. In other words, the whole reason for the destruction of their marriage. And I'm not even going to get into the idea that all the trauma these women were dealing with was somehow resolved by the love of a man. And as for enjoyment, I wrote, I did still enjoy the read at the outset, but again, it was very much hit by how annoyed I was as I continued reading. So this is a 1-star read for me. My camera is dying, so I'm going to put this down and try not to think about it ever again. As for my plans for the rest of the day and the rest of this readathon, I have obviously jumped into Happy Place by Emily Henry, so I'm going to keep going with that and update you on that later. Today, it's my lunch break right now. It's Friday. I'm working today, so I'm going to jump back into work. But after that, I've got a meeting with a potential wedding planner, so that's super exciting. And yeah, then Ben and I start our full week off for the first week of May, starting tomorrow, I guess, because tomorrow is Saturday. So again, super, super exciting. There's plenty of fun things to look forward to now that I've finished a pretty bad read. So I'll update you in a bit once I have more to say on Happy Place, but yeah, sorry for the somewhat downbeat update. Hey, it is the 1st of May, which means it is officially the end of Realmathon, the end of Magical Readathon. It is the end of April, the month of readathons. And you know what? It wasn't as amazing of a reading month as March was when I read 25 books, but I'm still pretty proud of what we accomplished and everything. And I'm still waiting for all the results to come out and everything from Cass and G about like which realm won and which course won, or order I think it is for Magical Readathon. But as for my personal contribution, I read a total of 15 books, which is 5,492 pages, and managed to accumulate 629 points for my team. So you know what? I'm not mad at that. I'm pretty happy with that. But you might be wondering how I sort of finished the month. What book did I finish the month on? What book did I finish everything on? The very last book that I picked up this month was Happy Place by Emily Henry, and I think I got 40 pages in and then went into a massive reading slump. I haven't been able to focus on reading anything. I've been watching or rewatching One Tree Hill because that is like my go-to obsession show whenever I'm just like feeling out of the mood for everything else I want to do. So I'm determined to get this done in the beginning of May before I smash out the rest of my May TBR, but this is the book that I finished the month on. I didn't finish it, but I'm happy with where it's going so far. I am enjoying it. As for Magical Readathon, I finished all my coursework, so I have everything I need to do to go into the autumn equinox in August, which I'm already anticipating. And I finished the entirety of the quest as well and managed to get a key to Auburn's study out of it. So again, good successful month. I hope you enjoyed all the vlogs that I've been putting out this month. Let me know if these weekly vlogs are something that you enjoy. I do want to make them a bit more lifestyle-y than I did this past month. I know I kept it very reading focused, and that's because I was trying to focus so much more on reading than anything else. Plus work was super hectic, so the idea of coming home after a day at work and fixing up my makeup and then sitting down to film was just not at all front of my mind. So let me know if these sorts of vlogs are what you enjoy, or if you want more lifestyle stuff, or if you just think, hey Beth, stop the weekly vlogging, you're not good at it. All that kind of thing. Come and chat to me in the comments down below, or just let me know what you're reading at the moment, if you participated in either of these readathons, how you finished a month, how many points you got for your team, if you finished your course load for Magical Readathon, all that kind of thing. Come and chat to me in the comments down below. I love talking to you guys, and I do my best to reply to every single comment. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and this month, and if you did, please do let me know by liking, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell all down below. It's a super easy way to help my channel grow, and I will see you lovely people in my next video. Bye!